بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم ربنا أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم أرنا حقائق الأشياء كما هي، ربنا زدنا علما وعملا وإخلاصا يا رب العالمين. اللهم انصر أولياءك في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها، اللهم انصرهم على عدوك وعدوهم إنك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم فرج عنا وعن إخواننا في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها، اللهم نفس كربنا وكربهم وثبت أقدامنا وأقدامهم والطف بنا وبهم يا أرحم الراحمين يا رب العالمين. اللهم صل وسلم على محمد عبدك ورسولك ونبيك وصفيك وخليلك محمد وآله وصحبه وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. آمين يا رب. We continue as to reading of Allama Iqbal's Reconstruction of Religious Thought in Islam. We have stopped somewhere here. And modern mathematics has confirmed his view. Whose view? Ibn Hazm, however, rejected the Asharite notion of infinitesimals, and modern mathematics has confirmed his view. We had a look at the Ashari movement. The Ashari argument, therefore, cannot logically resolve the paradox. Of modern thinkers, the French philosopher Bergson and the British mathematician Bertrand Russell have tried to refute Zeno's argument from their respective standpoints, which are very different, even though both were trained as mathematicians. But then they both turned to philosophy. Russell through first logic, and obviously Russell studied philosophy as well, but his basic training both in mathematics, and then he went into logical foundation of mathematics, wrote philosophy of mathematics, and wrote Principia Mathematica, and after that he was exhausted, so couldn't do any hard work, so he turned to philosophy. That's what he said in his biography. And Bergson changed for Bergson, the model is the biology as a science. On the other hand, for Russell, the model is physics and maths. So that's the main difference between their respective perspective or standpoint. Now, Allama Iqbal is attracted to Bergson because of his views on time, and I guess movement as well. Allama Iqbal is attracted towards, for reasons we have discussed. I mean, the reasons which we have partially discussed in previous sessions. Allama Iqbal was attracted to a dynamic conception of universe, and you see in his poetry, Persian and Urdu poetry, these sentiments all the time. Arahi Abi, Awazi Kunfukan, and things like that. And the main philosopher in that respect is his philosophical mentor, or his philosophical guide is Hegel. Basically, his conception is the Islamic version of so-called Islamic version of Hegel in Reconstruction of Religious Thought in Islam, at least. And Bergson sort of he uses Bergson's philosophy and other philosophies in order to it partially uses those philosophies to solidify his own conception of a self-realizing dynamic universe, which is the outcome of the creativity of the God, Almighty God, and that creativity is reflected in human beings as, image of gods, basically. So that's his main motivation dealing with it. And in this context, we have seen he also is attracted to Whitehead's process philosophy, because Whitehead also talks about becoming and process. So in that sense, Allama Iqbal with Hegel, with Bergson, with Hegel, with Whitehead belongs to the tradition of Heraclitus. So they are the philosophers who sort of give preference, who sort of give what's the word I'm looking for? But anyway, who prefer the Heraclitean version of the universe as compared to the Parmenidean version. So that's why Zeno is the main defender of, or the prototype of the defense of the Parmenidean worldview. They need to reject his arguments. But obviously, we have somebody like Plato who tries to synthesize those. Okay, so this is the context. To Bergson movement, so motion. To Bergson movement as a true change, as against apparent change or illusory change. But here again, we discussed this before, and we don't need to repeat it as such. But I'll just refer to it that here Iqbal is sort of playing on or ignoring the ambiguity which we have between true and appearance, and appearance and falsehood. Appearance is not necessarily falsehoods, but he is sort of taking it to mean appearance mean illusion. Appearance and illusion are different things. Because not all illusions are appearances, but not all appearances are illusions. Whatever we have is appearance. To Bergson, movement as true change is the fundamental reality. And that's for Iqbal as well. So that's why the main thing is becoming, not being. And God himself, Na'udzubillah, is becoming in this conception, as in Hegel's conception, and in Iqbal's conception as well. And not just here, but in part of his poetry as well. So the paradox of Zeno, to Bergson, movements as true change is the fundamental reality. And the paradox of Zeno, according to Bergson, in, 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 And what's the paradox? Paradox is that movement is, or change is, just appearance. And Iqbal sort of, as I said, is taking appearance in the sense of illusion as far as I can see. So the paradox of Zeno is due to a wrong apprehension of space and time. And what is the wrong apprehension, a la Bergson? Is that we take a space as discrete, infinitely divisible, and time as, and we basically conceptualize or understand time on the model of space, and then we get into those paradoxes about which we, in which movement, motion seems impossible, at least at the level of argument, or at the level of logic. So the paradox of Zeno is due to wrong apprehension of space and time, which are regarded by Bergson only as intellectual views of movement. By intellectual views meaning objectification or abstraction. By intellectual movement we mean here, I think, by, in part anyway, by intellectual what was the word he used? By intellectual view of motion or movement. I think in part that intellectual means objectification, which is making something into object which it is not. So motion is a lived reality. So only true motion can be only understood as from within rather than from without objectifying it. I think that's sort of the idea behind this intellectual view and its rejection. So intellectual, so reality, the paradox of Zeno is due to a wrong apprehension of space and time, which are regarded by Bergson only as intellectual views of movement or motion. It is not possible to develop here the argument of Bergson without a fuller treatment of the metaphysical concept of life on which the whole argument is based. According to the editor of this book, Allama Iqbal's lectures, Bergson's criticism of Zeno's argument is developed in Creative Evolution, page 250 to 30, 325 to 30, and also in earlier work, Time and Free Will, on page 113 to 15. So he mentions Bergson, but move on to Bertrand Russell. Okay. And that is continues with his reference to Whitehead, who was, although Whitehead's philosophy is closer to Bergson's philosophy than to Russell's. But in this chapter, he's talking a lot about physics and Einstein and all those things, and quantum physics, etc. And before that, he talked about Locke's conception of substance, etc., which we looked at. So I think that it's continuous with that. but if I'm not misremembering it, he did refer a bit more to Bergson in chapter 1, and we might have looked at it. And probably he will come back to Bergson, because Bergson is very important for him. Russell, more than Russell. Obviously, Russell is not important to Alam Iqbal. He is just using um, uh, Russell here for Cantor's assumed or presumed solution of Zeno's paradox. um, yeah, but Bergson. But before moving on to Russell, I'll just give just a brief summary of what Bergson, at least one view of, one interpretation of, one understanding of Bergson's view on Zeno's paradox, because that's the topic here. And probably I'll refer briefly to Whitehead's solution as well, because solution or understanding of Zeno's paradox, because in this regard, Zeno and in this regard, Bergson and Whitehead are quite close to each other, quite because they both. I mean, at least in certain aspects, they both. Um, they both have a dynamic view of universe. They are both in the becoming camp, becoming becoming camp of philosophy, as compared to being camp. um, okay, so let's. So basically, for Whitehead, in very brief, and maybe we'll look at it with in a bit more detail in another session. Whitehead's and Bergson both, I think they agreed on a critique of a mathematical or a spatial conception of time, and that is clear from, for example, Whitehead's critique of Russell's conception of time. In for example, is Russell's philosophy of mathematics. But where Whitehead and Bergson differ is the, on how to positively conceptualize or arrive at a notion of continuity, which form the core of the temporality as a process and its relation to becoming. Anyway, in short, Zeno Zeno's Zeno's paradoxes provide to Whitehead a backdrop through which he developed his own notion of uh, becoming of what he called becoming of continuity. On the other hand, so in a way, Whitehead takes Zeno's paradoxes seriously. On the other hand, for Bergson, Zeno's paradoxes are a false problem in the sense that they essentially rely on a false conception of time, intellectual conception of movement, which we refer to, or intellectual view of movement, or more precisely, what Bergson called specialized conception of time. So Zeno's paradoxes appear to be paradoxes because they rely on a conception of time which fashions or understand time on the image of space, and that sort of covers over the continuity of becoming, which can only be understood, I guess, only from within, from a phenomenological or sort of subjective, in quote, or subjective conception from within. So that's just a pointer towards the difference between, or at least, at least the difference is that Whitehead, although Whitehead and Bergson both agree on their critique of a specialized conception of time, they arrive at it differently, in the sense that Whitehead considered Zeno's paradoxes as a useful backdrop. On the other hand, Bergson treats it as a false problem. So basically, Bergson doesn't try to solve the problem, he tried to dissolve it in a more Wittgensteinian way. Okay, let's go back. So now he said that he's not going to talk about Bergson, because in order to talk about his critique, you need to develop his conception of life, which will take too much time, even though he does discuss, he gives like 2 pages to Russell, which seems a bit overblown. But anyway, we'll look at Bertrand Russell's argument proceed on Cantor's theory of mathematical continuity. So we'll look at it next time, inshallah. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wa salli wa sallim ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi wa dhurriyyatihi bi rahmatika ya